Hey, what is up guys? My name is Rahman and in this video I'm going to show you how you can build your own free WhatsApp AI chatbot or assistant running completely on your local PC, meaning you're not paying anybody for any API usage or any token usage. It's all running completely local. Before we jump into the actual build, let's do a quick overview of the architecture of the solution. So what happens is the user goes into WhatsApp, the user being you, of course, or whoever you want to expose this to. They send a message to a number, which is the number of this bot. This message goes to a system called Ngrok. So the reason we have Ngrok is because we're going to have all these apps running locally on our computer. And we're going to be using N8N, which is very much like Zapier or Make.com if you're familiar with that. It's going to essentially make all these systems talk to each other. Now, since everything is running locally, we're going to need Ngrok to actually take that API request and send it to your local computer. Because when you set this up, it's going to give you an IP address. And that IP address is essentially on your computer and it's not exposed to the internet, meaning when WhatsApp sends that message, it's not going to be able to reach your computer. And Ngrok is going to allow it to basically go from WhatsApp to Ngrok to your local computer. So once that hits N8N, we're first going to check, do we have a text message from WhatsApp? Or do we have a voice note? If we've got a text message, we're going to send it to something called Flowise, which is also, all of this is going to be running locally on your computer. Now, Flowise allows us to do some really cool stuff with large language models. In this case, we're going to be running Llama 3 locally through something called Ollama. And Flowise, what that's going to do is it's going to take that text message and it's going to give it to Llama 3 to generate a response. Now, as part of this whole thing, we're going to set it up to have access to a document. And that document is going to contain information, whatever you want it to know. In this example, it's going to be a document that's basically training for a salesperson in a sales position. And we'll jump into that in a sec. This is going to generate a response. Over here, it generates AI response. That's going to ping that back to N8N. And then N8N is going to send that response to WhatsApp. So pretty simple. Now, there's some pretty cool stuff that happens when we get a voice note. So when the user sends a message, being a voice note, once again goes to Ngrok, that then goes to N8N. Now that voice note is then given to something called Whisper, which is an OpenAI product. Luckily, this is open source, so you can run it completely local on your computer. And what this does is it helps us transcribe that audio file into text. So whatever you say is going to be converted into text, and then that text is going to be given to Flowise. And once again, we're going to do exactly the same thing here, where we're going to take that text, we're going to give it to Llama 3 with whatever relevant information gotten from our documents. This is just a simple RAG system running here. And then Llama 3 is going to generate a response, and that response is going to get pinged back to N8N, and N8N is going to send it back to WhatsApp. So let's take a look at a quick demo of this before we jump into the build. Alright, so we're in WhatsApp here. Let me ask this chatbot a question. Let's say I have a customer that keeps telling me the product is too expensive. What can I do? Right, now we've sent that message and we're looking here in N8N. It's currently running, so we're just going to give it a few seconds. And there we have a response. There we go. When faced with this objection, it's essential to acknowledge their concern about budget, explore the specific financial constraints they're operating under, and so forth. So not too bad, right? So let's do a voice note. So I have this customer that keeps saying that they're happy with their current supplier. How can I handle that? All right, there the voice note goes off and there it's running. So let's just give it a few seconds. By the way, if you have a really fast computer, this should go a lot faster because what happens here is we have to essentially run Llama 3 on our local computer to generate that response. So the more processing power you have, the faster this is going to go. All right, we've got a response here. When a customer mentions being satisfied with their current arrangement, it's essential to acknowledge their satisfaction, blah, blah, blah. As you can see, the response is here. And by the way, this is all being answered from a document, the sales guide right here. This is all the information that the bot has to answer these questions from. All right, so let's dive into the actual build. So let's build the solution together. So the first thing we want to do is install Node.js if we don't have that already. And what that's going to allow us to do is to run N8N and Flowise on our local computer. So let's go into Google and we're just going to type in Node.js. Open up the first link and you're basically just going to download it and install it. Just follow the installer instructions. Once that is done, we'll want to install N8N and then run that locally. How we're going to do that, we're going to open up Google and type in N8N self-hosting docs. Then we're going to open up this first link and we can go to npm. So what we want to do here is scroll down here and we're just going to open up our terminal. This is after you've installed Node.js. It won't work without Node.js. You want to just copy this command, open up a terminal, and then you want to run this command. So I'm getting a bunch of errors here because it's permissions. If you're getting the same, just use sudo and then npm install n8n-g. And then you type in your password. And there it goes. I'm going to kill this now because I've already got it installed. You basically just run this command and it installs it for you. So once you're done with that, all you need to do is just type in n8n start in your terminal. If you are running this on Windows, you'll have to go to your home. Well, you open up PowerShell, you go to your home folder, and you go to this .n8n directory. Once you've done that, you just use n8n start. Like that. And the cool thing with N8N is you just press O and then it opens up N8N for you. Otherwise, you just go to localhost on this port like this. If I open this up, just type in localhost : and then the port number that they gave you, which is right here. And then if you run that, it'll take you to N8N. If this is the first time that you're setting this up, it'll take you through a setup screen. Just set up your username and password and then you should be good to go. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is install Flowise. So we're going to go and type in Flowise self-hosting docs. You're going to open up this get started. And this is also pretty much the same. You're just going to copy this install Flowise npm command. Go to your terminal. I'm just going to kill this for now. And say npm install -g Flowise and just let that finish. I'm going to kill it because I already have it installed. But yeah, once that is done, then to actually start it up, you're going to use this npx Flowise start. So let's copy this. Let's go to our terminal, npx Flowise start. All right, there it's running at port 3000. So if you recall from the N8N one, all we're going to do is open up localhost : and then the port that it gives you, which is generally 3000. If I open this up, and then you should be good to go. By the way, if you're seeing this, which is blinding, you can just switch that over to dark mode and, you know, the light attracts the bugs, so be careful with that. Anyway, so now that we have Flowise installed, the next thing we want to do is actually set up our Facebook business profile if we don't already have one. And we need that in order to set up an app so that we can use WhatsApp. So what we want to do is go to business.facebook.com, open that up, and then over here, if you don't have a business profile yet, you can just click create a business portfolio and then just follow these steps until you have one set up. Alright, so now that you have a business portfolio set up, what we want to do is go to developers.facebook.com. And here we're going to create an app. So once you're on this page, hit My Apps, and we want to hit Create App. So this is where you need your business portfolio. If you haven't set one up, just follow the previous steps and go set one up quickly. Otherwise, just select the one that you've already set up, hit Next. You want to click Other over here. I'm just going to move myself up, and we're going to hit Next. Move myself back down here. Then over here, we want to click Business. Now we're just going to fill out the details here. So I'm just going to call this Test AI Chatbot, and we're going to select our business portfolio and hit Create App. Alright, so now we want to set it up for WhatsApp. So you're going to hit the Setup button right here. Alright, so once you're in here, you want to go to API Setup, here on the left. And in here, you're basically going to set up a test number that you're going to test this with. So you're going to click this drop down. If you don't already have a number here, just hit this Manage Phone Numbers list, add a phone number, and then pick your extension, add your number, hit Next, then you should be good to go. So if I'm going to select my test number, we're going to hit the Send Message button. So it looks like we may have skipped a step here. So to actually receive those messages, you might need to generate an access token. So let's click this button. Continue. We're going to select this one, hit continue, and save. All right, so let's test that again. Send message. There we go. We just got a hello world right here. So that means this is working. So now we can move on to the next step, which will be actually setting this whole system up. So from here, we want to install Ngrok so that we can actually send requests from here. So when somebody sends us a message, it'll go to Meta, and then Meta can send that message to our N8N instance. For it to be able to access our N8N instance, we're going to have to expose that URL, that local host, whatever the IP address is, to the internet. And we're going to use Ngrok for that. So let's type in ngrok.com, and you're going to want to you're going to want to sign up. You have to create an account. It is free, so go ahead and do that. Then hit get Ngrok, download. And then you pick your system, Windows or Mac, and you can either use the command to install it or get an actual installer. And then just follow the instructions here. Alright, so if you recall, when we installed N8N, if you run N8N start, it'll tell you that it's running at this localhost 5678. So now that you have Ngrok installed, what we want to do is we want to open up a different terminal. By the way, you should have Flowise and N8N both running in separate terminals by now. So we're going to open up another terminal and we're going to say Ngrok HTTP 5678. And it's going to do that. What you want here is this address right here. If you copy this, this is your public URL. So if you send a request to this, it's going to go to this right here. You can also set up authentication on this. Check out the Ngrok docs. I think you can set up like a username and password called basic auth. I think you can also do bearer token and a bunch of other stuff as well if you want to secure this endpoint. For now, there's no auth set up. Every time you run this command, by the way, it's going to give you a different URL. So if you want a stable URL that doesn't change, you're going to have to pay for this. Otherwise, if you're just testing it out, you can just use this. So we're going to copy this. We are going to go back to our test AI chatbot that we've created here. Now we want to go over to the configuration page. Okay, so we're going to be doing a few things here, but before we do that, we need to go over to N8N and create a new workflow. So let's go over here. I'm going to hit add workflow, and the first thing we want to add is a webhook. So let's click here. So this does get a little bit technical here, but just bear with me. I'm going to make it as simple as possible. Just follow along and you should get set up on your side. So what we want to do here is change this HTTP method to post. Then under this respond option here, we want to click using respond to webhook node. All right, then let's go back to Canvas and we're going to add a respond to webhook node. So before we set this up, let's actually test this. So I'm going to hit test workflow. Well, actually before that, let's open this up. And what we want is to grab our Ngrok URL here, this right here. Now we're going to go back to our test AI chatbot, plug that in there. And now remember, this is basically our local host. What was that? 5678, right? So if you go to N8N, you're going to see localhost 5678. We want to take everything after that, and then we want to go back to our test AI chatbot and add it at the end. Oh, I add an extra slash here. So this is what it will look like. So if you had localhost 5678, you're going to basically replace that with what Ngrok gave you. And over here, it doesn't really matter what we put. I'm just going to say test. Now let's just make sure that we hit test workflow, verify and save. So this is not going to succeed right now. I'll show you why in a sec. So that actually did not succeed, and the problem is that this should be get. I apologize. So let's change the the HTTP method to get, and we're gonna go back to Canvas, test workflow. Let's verify and save again. All right, so now we actually have some data that we can view. Let's go to the respond to webhook. This is the data that we got from Meta. So what we want to do is change the respond with to text. This is just to authenticate, by the way, so that we can actually use this N8N workflow with WhatsApp. And all we want to do is grab this hub.challenge and drag it over into request body. Then go back to canvas, test workflow, and let's hit verify and save again. There we go. Now it's a success. Now we can actually start using this for WhatsApp. So in order to do that, you want to scroll down here under messages, just click this slider and subscribe to messages. Alright, so what this is going to do is every time we send a message on WhatsApp, this is now going to be sent to this N8N workflow. And just also so you're aware, if I open this up, we're using this test URL at the moment, and this only works if you're using test workflow. Once we're done testing, we're going to have to actually set it up to use this production URL. Because once you activate this workflow, it's all going to go to the production URL, but we'll get there in a sec. So now we want to actually set up the workflow to receive the messages and to do the appropriate stuff with them. Alright, so now that we've authenticated, what we want to do now is make a copy of this webhook, and this is just to set up the webhook that's going to receive the messages. So let's hit duplicate. This is very important, by the way, because if you don't do that, this is the URL that you've authenticated, and we want the same URL right here. So if you create a new webhook, just make sure that it's set to this URL. Easiest way is just to duplicate. So once we have that, we're going to change this to post, and respond, let's set it back to immediately. Now let's hit test workflow. Let's go back to WhatsApp. I'm going to type in hello, and there it's sent. So let's see in N8N. There we go. We've successfully received it. And this is what it looks like. And here's our message. So now that we're receiving this, the next thing we want to do is set up Ollama so that we can actually install Llama 3 on our local computer so that we can run the large language model, and then actually set up Flowise to generate responses to these messages. So what we're going to do is go to ollama.com. Then we're going to hit this download button. This is going to download an installer. I'm not going to walk through that right now because I already have it installed. I did do an in-depth video on how to get this up and running. It's fairly simple, but if you struggle over these next few steps, just go check that out. I'll leave a link in the description. So hit this download button, get the installer, walk through it. It'll install Ollama for you. Then we're going to go over to models up here. Now there's a ton of different models to choose from. I'm just going to use Llama 3.1. So if you click on this, you'll see different versions of Llama 3.1 available. So the 70 billion parameter version is going to require a lot of compute power. So I would recommend just sticking to the 8 billion, but try it out. So what you want to do is just copy this command right here, then go to a terminal. Let me open up a new one here. And after you've installed Ollama, just make sure to open up a new terminal. Then paste it in and hit enter. So I'm just going to kill this now, but generally what happens if you're doing this for the first time is it's going to download Llama 3.1. And it's going to download about 4.7 gigabytes. So once that's done downloading, that means you have Llama 3.1 set up on your system. It'll actually open up a terminal where you can chat to it. But in any case, you can check out that other video if you want to see the exact steps and the in-depth guide of how to do this. Alright, so now that we have that set up, let's go to our local instance of Flowise. I'm going to type in localhost 3000. Let's create a new flow. Alright, so the first thing that we want to do is create a conversational retrieval QA chain. Alright, let's zoom out here a little bit. And now we need a few things here. We need a chat model, we need a vector store retrieval, and we need memory. So let's set up our chat model. What we want to do is grab chat Ollama here, and what you'll see is that it automatically gives you this localhost 11434. So if we go to a terminal and we type in Ollama list, that's going to give you the models that you currently have installed. So you want to grab this, or whichever model you have installed. You want to grab this name right here, and you want to populate it over here. So that's your model name. If it doesn't work with the base URL that it gives you here, how you can find your base URL is if you go back to your terminal and you type in Ollama serve. It'll give you your URL right here. So then you just want to copy this 11434, and then just paste it over here. By the way, localhost is exactly the same as this IP address, this 127.0.0.1. So this, in essence, is the same thing as this right here. In any case, let's hook this up to this. Now the next thing we want is some memory. So I'm just going to use buffer memory. And this is going to be the memory that stores the conversation history. If you're doing a production system, I'd recommend you do something like Upstash, because this is just going to store the conversation in your memory, and Upstash would store it in like a database. The next thing we want to do is our vector store retriever. So let's go over here, and for this video, I'm just going to do an in-memory retriever. If you're doing a production system, I'd recommend doing something like Pinecone. So we're going to grab our in-memory vector store, hook it up here. So we actually have to set up our document quickly, which we should have done before we started this. So I'm just going to save this for now. I'm just going to call it test flow. Hit save. Now let's go back. Let's go over to document stores. I actually have it set up here already, but I'll just set it up anew. So add new, test document. I'll just give it the same description, add. Then we want to open it up. And let's hit add document loader. And we're just going to use a file loader right now. So here we want to upload our file. So let's hit upload. Just navigate to your directory where you have your file. Just going to hit open. There we've uploaded it. Now we just want to change the splitter here to recursive character text splitter. And we'll leave this as is. So now if we process it, we should see it split it up into these chunks, which is exactly what we want. Great. So let's go back to our chat flow. And in here, we want to add a document loader. Actually, no, not a document loader. What we want is a document store. We're going to grab this document store. And over here, we're going to choose our test document. And we're going to hook it up here. Then we want our embeddings model, which is just going to take those chunks and it's going to convert them into embeddings, which is just numerical representation of text. So let's go down here to embeddings, and we want specifically the Ollama embeddings. All right, we're going to hook this up here, and we're going to use the same model right here. So now this should pretty much be it. Let's save it. We're going to hit this button right here to upsert our vector store. So this is going to convert it to the embeddings, and it's going to load it up into memory so we can chat with it. So let's give it a moment here to load this up. All right, there we go. We can preview them here if we want. All right, let's close this. Let's test this out. Let me move myself over here. Hey, what can I do if my customer says the product is too expensive? So now it should take the information from this document and answer this question. By the way, Ollama tends to go to sleep, like if you don't use it for 5 minutes, I think. So the first question you ask, it's going to take a while for it to load up and actually process. So there we go. According to section 5 of our sales guide, there it gives the answer. So I did tweak the prompt a little bit over here under additional parameters. So this is the normal prompt that Flowise gives you. I did tweak it slightly in my version of the chatbot, which I'm going to paste right here. I'm going to give you this template so that you can use it for yourself as well. So I added some additional prompting in here to make sure that it doesn't like reference the document and so forth. Anyway, so when I say reference a document, I mean like according to the document, you know, sometimes you want it to talk as if it knows what it's talking about based on the content in your document. So in any case, now that we have this set up, let's just make sure to save it. The next thing we want to do is actually hook it up to N8N so that we can start sending our messages to this chat flow. So let's jump back into N8N. The next thing we want to do is hit this plus button, and we want to do an HTTP request to Flowise. So if you go back to Flowise, I'm just going to close up some of these tabs here so we don't get confused. All right, so if you hit this button up here and go to curl, it's going to give you the URL that you need to send a request to in order to trigger this chat flow. So we're going to copy this URL and we're going to put it right here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to need a body. So the first thing we need if we go back here, is we need a question. So let's copy this, and we're going to give our parameter name question. And this question needs to contain the text of the message. So let's drag this in right here. All right, so let's test this step. That didn't seem to work. Let's see why. Oh, because we need to make it a post request. So let's test it. There we go. Now we get a response back. I'm Alfred. How can I assist you today? All right, so this is working pretty well. Now let's actually add a response back to WhatsApp. So we're going to open up a WhatsApp Business Cloud node here. And what we want is the send message action. What we want to do is actually create a new credential. Well, yeah, let's do that. Create new credential. I'm going to call this test chatbot WhatsApp. And these values right here, you can get by going back to API setup here. It looks like it wants us to generate another token. So let's do that. Generate access token, reconnect. There we go. Copy this, go back to N8N, and that'll be our access token. Then our business account ID is going to be this value right here. So just click this copy button and let's paste that here. Click save. There we go. Connection tested successfully. Great. All right, so now that we have that here, let's actually set this up. So we want to grab the phone number here from the webhook. So if we scroll down here, we should have it right here. This messages from. So we want to put that into recipient's phone number, and our sender's phone number is going to be, this is going to be pulled in from Meta. So if you see this number right here, I'm just going to select it. It'll be this same number here. So this will be pulled into N8N. And that's the options that you'll have here. Now the text body is going to be the response. So what we want to do is grab this text right here and plug it in there. Now if I hit test step, all right, let's pull up WhatsApp. There we go. I'm Alfred. How can I assist you today? Great. So now that we have that working, there is still one little problem with this. For example, if I hit test flow, now let's go and say, my name, let's say, hi, my name is Rahman. Right, now we should see this executing. There we go, we get a response. Hello Rahman, it's nice to meet you. Is there something I can help you with? Now, let me just hit test workflow again. And let's say, what is my name? So now we just wait for this to execute again. All right, now it says, I'm not sure. So why is that? So right now, if we open up Flowise, we close this, we go to view messages. If you can see here, it's starting a new chat every time we send a message, which is not ideal. So what we want to do is actually give it an ID so that it can make sure that when you're sending another message, it knows that it's a follow-up to an existing chat. So let's set that up quickly. So what we're going to do is open up this HTTP request, and we're just going to add an additional parameter here. Add parameter, we're going to call it chat ID. And all we want to do is just take the user's number and set that as a chat ID. So every time the same person messages from the same phone number, it'll just treat it as the same chat. So let's go back, hit test workflow. Let's do the exact same thing. Hi, my name is Rahman. Let's just wait for it to execute here. All right, let's hit test workflow again. And as you can see, it gave us a response. Let's say, what is my name? Let's wait for it to run again. All right, I remember your name is Rahman. Perfect. So just so you know what that looks like in Flowise, if we go back here and hit view messages, there it's using the number as a session ID. So it's tracking the conversation history as we chat to it, which is pretty cool. So this is already pretty good, and we could stop here and just have this assistant function this way. By the way, in Flowise, you can, instead of using a conversational retrieval QA chain, use an agent and hook up different tools to it, so it can like write to spreadsheets, send API requests, do all sorts of stuff for you depending on what you tell it to do. Just kind of throwing that out there so that you know the scope of what you can do with this. This is a very, very simple and basic example of this. So the next part that I'm going to show you is how to set up the voice note process so that when you voice note it, it transcribes the audio and it sends that to Flowise to generate a response. Now, to set this up, you're going to have to do a little bit of coding. I am going to keep it as simple as possible for you. I will also share the code with you so that you just can follow the setup processes and have this set up on your local system. Let's jump into it. So what we have here is basically OpenAI Whisper, which is just a model that takes audio and transcribes it into text running on our local computer. I will share this file with you. You can just follow these instructions. If you don't have Python installed on your local computer, I'll also leave a link in the description to a video that I did showing you how to go through the steps to get that set up. Once you have done that, or if you already have Python running, all you need to do is just run this in your terminal, pip3 install OpenAI Whisper and Flask. Then you need to install FFmpeg, which is just a library that lets you work with multimedia files, text, images, and so forth. Whisper uses that behind the scenes. So if you're on Mac, you can just run brew install FFmpeg. On Windows, just open up PowerShell and run choco install FFmpeg. Then you want to just navigate to wherever you have your project, this file whisper_local.py. Just use this exact same code, and you want to just run Python 3 and then the file name. And that's basically gonna, let me show you what that looks like. If I kill this now, so the first time you run it, it's actually going to download Whisper, so just give it a little bit of time to do its thing. So then when we run it subsequently or after it's downloaded, it's just going to give you this right here. And this is running at port 5000. So we're just going to be sending requests to localhost 5000 to get these files transcribed. And what that means is we send a voice note, like a voice file. That voice file goes to this code. This code transforms it into text, and that's what we send to Flowise. So now that we have this up and running, let's go back to N8N and get this set up. Alright, so we're back in N8N. Now let's add something called, I'm just going to move these two nodes up, and I'm going to add a router, which all that does, or a switch, I think that's what it's called. Right, a switch. So all this is going to do is it's going to let us add conditions like if we receive a text message from WhatsApp, do this. If we receive a voice message from WhatsApp, do this. So if we scroll down here and we go into this body entry and so forth, under messages, it gives us a type over here. So let's say for the first condition, type is equal to text. The second condition we want is type is equal to audio. Let's test this. So as you can see here, it went and the first condition was satisfied. The second one wasn't because this isn't audio. So let's go back here. So if text is type is equal to text, we would just want to continue doing what we're doing here. Let's move these up. All right, and now if type is equal to audio, we want to do some other stuff. Let's add a WhatsApp Business Cloud node. What we want to do is a download media node. And actually to set this up, let's move this back down, hit test workflow. Let's go back to WhatsApp. Let's say, hey, my name is Roman. It's nice to meet you. Send this off. Let's go back here. All right, so it seemed to actually have a bit of a problem if I hit test workflow and try and send a message. So I had to just hit this little play button on this webhook right here to receive that. I think it's because we haven't actually set this node up yet. That's not really a problem. So all we need to do then is just, we've received some data here from that voice note. Let's open this up and hit test step. So let's look at the output. So we've got type is audio. Let's just confirm that here. So type is audio. Great. So now we can open this node up and we can see the input here. Let's select our test chatbot WhatsApp credentials here. Now what we need to download this file is the media ID. And the media ID, you'll see here, there's an audio here, and this is the ID that we want to use. That's what it looks like. Let me just open this up a little so you can see. There it is. Messages, it tells us it's type audio, and here's the audio information. So we just want this ID. So the interesting thing about this is that the operation is download, right? If I hit test step, it doesn't actually download the voice note. It gives us a URL to download it instead, which is a little confusing, but anyway. It's not really a problem for us. So all we're going to do is add an additional HTTP step here to download that file. This is actually pretty simple. All you want to do is take this URL. This is going to be a GET request to this URL. Change the authentication type to predefined credential type. Select WhatsApp API, and then your credential, just use the same one that you've been using for this whole flow. So now if we hit test step, what you should see is the actual file. Now you can download it and listen to it if you want, but what we're going to do now is actually hit our Whisper endpoint that we've set up on our local computer to transcribe the file. Let's do another HTTP request. Oh, by the way, just to keep this consistent, let's just rename these. When I say consistent, I mean logical. So we know what node is doing what. So this is going to be generate AI response. Let's do that. And this is going to be get voice note file. There we go. Now we can add another HTTP node. It just gets very confusing when you have just a bunch of random HTTP nodes sitting around and you don't know what's doing what. So this is going to be transcribe audio. All right. So here we're going to do a post request, and the URL we're going to be using is going to be this 127.0.0.1. You can also say localhost 5000, and the endpoint is transcribe. So if we hop back on over to our code editor, you will see this is where it's running, and that's exactly what we've used right here. Then the transcribe endpoint is defined right here. So we've got a route saying if we get transcribe and the request type is post, we're going to run this transcribe audio function, which is going to transcribe our audio. So if we hop back over here, we're going to be sending a body, and the type is going to be init binary file. And in here, you just want to put in data, which is just this right here. So let's hit test step. There we go, transcription. Hey, my name is Roman. It's nice to meet you, which is exactly what we said in our voice note. And you'll see right here, there's some output saying that we've run this. All right, so this is looking pretty good. Now, let me just move myself up here. We just want to copy this node, put it over here, and let's just remove this value. I'm just gonna change to schema so that I can grab, drag and drop these. We're just gonna take the transcription, this text right here, and this is what we're gonna send as a question. The chat ID, remember we still have access to all these other nodes. So we're gonna go back to the webhook node. We're gonna go under messages, and we're gonna grab this from value. So let's delete this and drag this in right here. We can test the step and get our response. There we go. Nice to meet you, Roman. I'm Alfred, blah, blah, blah. As you can see, it's working. All right, so now all we want to do is just hook this up here. And it is actually, no, that's not going to work because this is a different node. So let's just copy this. I'm sure there's a cleaner way to do this, but in any case, you can play around with it, get it to work the way you want it to work. So let's just, well, that's fine. Here, we just want to grab this text right here. Okay, I think that was fine to begin with, but in any case, let's test step. Pull up WhatsApp. There we go. We're getting our response right here. Great. All right, so we're almost done. This is basically all we want to do. The only other thing is I'm going to add this now, but you'll see that when we run this in production, what happens is that when we send a message, that message is then received and we get an event saying that, hey, this message was read, or hey, this message was delivered. Now, when you run this in the production version of N8N, meaning when we activate this and use a production endpoint, it throws a bunch of errors saying, well, when you receive a message, you read it, you generate a response and you send it back. That all works perfectly. But we receive a bunch of other events without a message, and that's what fails. So basically what we want to do is add another route here in our switch, and all we want to put here, let me add another route, is this, just make sure to make an expression, JSON body entry, the first element, changes, the first element, value, if that has a statuses field, and that just tells you whether it's been delivered or read. If it exists, we're going to use this array exists. If that is the case, then we don't want to do anything because we're not processing those events. We just want the actual message. Now that we have this set up, what we want to do is open up this node. We want to grab the production URL and we just want to grab this bit right here. The reason we're doing this is when we activate this, WhatsApp is still going to be sending to our test endpoint, which is this right here. And the test URL only works when we click test workflow. When we activate it, it's listening to this production URL, to anything going here. So let's copy this right here. Let's go back to our chatbot. Let's go back to configuration. And we want to paste that URL right here. And here we can type in prod. It doesn't really matter for the way init does it. The other thing is we need to activate this. Let's just hit save first. Activate. Now we can go over into executions here and we can see what happens. So let's hit verify and save. So that looks like it worked. There it is. Now, in theory, we should be able to go ahead and chat with us. Let's say, hey, what can you help me with? Now we should see this running. Perfect. So there we see we got some text. Now if I can zoom in a little bit here. Our first condition was, is it text? The second one, is it audio? And the third one, is it like a receipt, like message received event or something like that? Anything else really. So this one was text, so it went to the correct route. And as you can see, we did get a response right here. And what you'll see now that I actually opened it, we got another event here. I'll show you what this looks like. So that'll be right here. This is the statuses that we were looking for. And this just says red. So when an event like this comes in and we don't have that route checking for statuses, it just fails. You just see a bunch of failures. That's what we want to avoid. That's why you see we have this, let me zoom in here. We have this route right here, which just says do nothing if you get that. I mean, you can build stuff around it, but that's not what we're doing in this video. So that's pretty cool. Let's test this a little bit more. Let's send a voice note. Let's see what it said. I'd be happy to help you. Is there something specific you're looking for help with? So let's go back to our document. Let's see what we have here. Let's try this. Customer says I need to think about it. Hey, so my customer said that they need to think about it. How can I handle that? All right, let's send that off and let's see what response we get back. Also, let's just take a look at what this looks like in N8N when this is done processing. Alright, as you can see, it did take the right route here. So this is for audio and it sent a response right here. When a customer says they need to think about it, usually sound that they have concerns or hesitations about making a decision. Need to acknowledge their consideration. And let's just make sure yeah, there we go. Acknowledge their need for consideration, explore specific concerns or hesitations. Right, there we go. So it's basically generated our response and we can chat back and forth to this. There you have it. I'll share all these templates with you so that you can use them on your own as well. By the way, if you want to learn how to set up much more complex RAG systems, I did a really cool video on how you can use LangChain to set that up. I'll leave a card up on the screen right now. Go check that out. It's really cool.